Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, and there are some truly massive changes coming to Battlefield 5, but you really aren't hearing the full story behind them, and nor are many of you aware of just how massive these changes could be. So I often now provide a timestamp to skip my introductions, and thus here is one today to get to the main topic at hand if you wish. Please do use it if you feel the need, and if you have a genuinely short attention span or just aren't all that interested in this topic, then, well, look at the length of the video. So this might not be the one for you, which is totally fine. Either just click off it or leave it playing and walk away. I'll catch you in the next one, because today it really is beyond important that you hear everything if you're interested in this topic. And I am going to be as brief as possible because there's so much for me to cover, while still providing you with all of the details I'm able to. This will be extremely long and in-depth due to this. I have to do this the right way, and the footage today will be less action focused and more just extended sections because this is so long and I simply wasn't expecting to make this yet. The official info regarding changes dropped yesterday at the time of making this part of the video, and I assume I'm going to get this video out tomorrow, which is today when you're watching it. You see what I'm saying? So I'm using whatever footage I have for this and we'll just make it fit to the correct length. I'm sure you understand, and most creators do this for a lot of videos anyway, so it's whatever. Now, some of this information today you won't be seeing anywhere else, but I will also need to be somewhat vague at times. I don't want to land anyone in trouble here. I'm sure you understand that, and this means if you wish to take something I say today with a pinch of salt, then that's up to you, of course. I'm simply providing what I know. It's up to you whether you believe me or not, but what I can say is that my track record of covering Battlefield for about 3 years now shows that I've never fabricated anything, have always presented with honesty, and put the community first. Now, if you watch this bit and intend to watch the whole video, then please start your comment below with "I'm a potato gamer," so I know that you're commenting having taken in the info provided. It makes you special to me. No, really, you're special. Like my mum tells me. Anyway, so I have a friend, who I won't name of course, who speaks to me about what goes on at DICE. His information has always been completely reliable, and at times absolutely damning of the decision-making process over there. This is how I'm able to make this video today. I've never mentioned any of this before, and I've never, and still do not, intend to specifically hurt DICE. This is not a hit piece or anything like that. In fact, the video I made prior to this one was vastly majority positive, which is why it's so frustrating for me to see these changes I've heard about actually coming, despite what current players want. And I have said many times before, do not go after individual developers, and do not vilify people or sections of studios without knowing who is to blame. But I do feel you should hear why this game is as it is, why it's sometimes such a state. I do feel like you should get some information regarding the product you've bought with your own money, only to see delays, decisions that don't line up with what the player base overwhelmingly wants, etc, etc. Now, I have more to go over, but let me get one thing out of the way here so you don't feel like I'm just dragging this out. Let's get an important piece of information out there. These TTK changes, or at least bullet to kill changes, are not a recently implemented plan. They are not necessarily being put in place solely for the reasons that are being provided by DICE, and they are not being put in place purely with the existing player base in mind. In fact, they're being put in place despite what the majority of the current player base wants. They are not changes to specifically balance out spotting alterations, nor are they changes to purely balance out long-range fights, as this affects some very close-range engagements a lot. Nor is it specifically for any of the other suggestions I've seen. They are not reactionary to current events and circumstances. I'll go over all of this in as much detail as I'm able to as we progress, as well as so much more today. But no, these changes are not at all what they seem in terms of the reasoning behind them. I know this to be the case, and while a lot of the notes provided say a lot of things that do make sense, I assure you a lot of it is corporate speak, just explanations you're given when things are being changed for another reason. So again, to stress, some of this video is me simply providing what I've been told by someone else. These are not direct accusations as such. It's never sensible to do that when you aren't directly the party involved, despite me feeling like this really is the hidden truth as per the title and thumbnail of the video. Take it all with a pinch of salt if you wish. I just wouldn't feel okay not telling you guys what I know. So why do I trust this information? Well, I knew a lot of the information now available from yesterday, or the day before when you're hearing this, way prior to it being announced, and things before that even, proving to me that the info is reliable, of course. So while this adds little validity for you, it provides it beyond all doubt out for me. So now it's up to you if you trust my assertions. But I can show you a few little pieces to substantiate my claims. So on the 23rd of October, I tweeted, "Fire Trench." I believe this was prior to the flamethrower and katana being announced, unless I was a little slow on actually making the tweet. But yes, fire referred to the flamethrower, and trench referred to the katana, as in Trench Raider 2.0, as a reference to the elite class in Battlefield 1. If I was late on tweeting that out, then whoops, my bad. Again, it's up to you if you believe me. Or there's this shot. Obviously, a huge amount is blocked out to protect identities, but you can see that in late October, Fliegerfaust changes were being discussed by myself. Something that the community were only just made aware of and will also be covered later in this video. I have more examples, but I'm sure you get the point. By now you either believe me or you don't, and that's totally up to you. I don't expect this to be a video that goes over totally smoothly either way, but I felt like I had to make it and just deal with any negativity that's sure to come along with the positivity. Right, thank you so much for being patient there as I got all of that out. With my extensive lead-in now laid out, what's the plan for today? Well, I'm going to discuss the TTK changes, the truly massive impact it's likely going to have, then cover the actual reasons behind them and what it tells us about the situation, followed by covering lots of other changes coming as well, many of which are actually very positive by the way. So at least this video will end on a decently happy note, even if it starts with, well, let's just call it bad stuff. So the TTK, or times kill, of the vast majority of the guns in this game is changing. They're going to kill more slowly, and not just in terms of bullets to kill, I'm certain it's going to be time to kill, despite what some other people are saying, and we'll get to that as well, I promise. And this means that essentially the times kill of the entire game will feel slower, potentially by a lot, although there are some glaring omissions from these changes which will be important and will be covered. Now a lot of you are probably already aware of this stuff, so I won't dwell on it for too long, but a basic overview is that weapons will take more bullets to kill aside from bolt action carbines, sniper rifles and anti-material rifles. Oh, and shotguns as well. Some of you probably have some alarm bells ringing in your heads just hearing that already, but those are the current planned changes with the ever-present caveat that they'll continue to monitor the performance of these weapons. By the way, I'll link to all of these notes in the description below if you want to take a look for yourself. And they provide some example charts to show how things will be changing. So here's the ever popular and consistent STG. The yellow/orange line denotes the current bullets to kill values over range, and the blue line is the intended bullets to kill after they've changed it. So you can see that it will now kill in a minimum of 5 bullets rather than 4. Will require 6 bullets at 40 meters, which is currently, as of right now, the most it ever needs to kill at any range, and at 100 meters will require 8 bullets to kill. 8 from an STG. Trust me when I say that's a lot. And 100 meters isn't all that far away in all honesty. In fact, it's going to require 8 bullets at just 75 meters, which really isn't that far away, and fights that range happen far more often than many of you probably imagine. Or we have the trench carbine that will require 9 bullets at 75 meters, or the MG42, which will require a massive 12. Yes, this is a nerf to MMGs, which will make a lot of people happy, and some people very unhappy, but don't get this twisted, these are not changes to nerf MMGs. It's just another product of these changes overall. Or there's the Thompson, which will also require 12. It's about to be a bullet sponge simulator at range, people. I can't express just how much of a change that's going to be, even with vaguely proposed changes to recoil and rate of fire. There's no way this doesn't have a massive impact. Apparently, the average engagement distance in this game is 22 meters. That's what the red line means on those charts. And different guns are built to perform at different ranges, of course, and all that, but it's a useful yardstick to use here. I'll show you again. We can see that at the average 22 meter range, which isn't far at all, the Thompson will now require 8 bullets to kill, rather than the current 5. That's with an SMG at just 22 meters. I find that staggering personally, and I can only imagine how hard some other things are hit, which we can't see yet. And I will add here, as I alluded to before, there are plans to increase ammo counts and make changes to recoil and rates of fire, in order to somewhat combat these time to kill changes, which of course there has to be, otherwise it would be ridiculous. So I will reserve absolute judgment until we know those details, and I've had some time to actually experience it. But for a bit of slight speculation, the only logical outcome of that is that recoil is reduced in order to mitigate the slower time to kill, and or to mitigate some higher rates of fire. So expect some even more laser beam-esque gunplay in a game that already has pretty widely regarded easy to control weapons. I mean, just imagine on PC. It might actually get close to literal point and click shooting, but we'll have to just see how things turn out. And the idea that I see some throwing around that the plan changes to recoil and rate of fire will keep the TTK the same is heavily flawed. Firstly, because of some of the things I'm going to tell you in this video, but secondly, because it's just illogical for many reasons. Why rebalance the game to feel different after a year when people aren't asking for it, only to keep the time to kill the same? And the rate of fire increases needed for some weapons to retain the same time to kill would have to be extremely large. In fact, just to have it anywhere near the same at certain ranges would still have to be massive changes, and they're just not gonna do that. I mean, the rate of fire change you'd need on the MG42 would just make it absolutely stupid. Honestly, that theory just doesn't make sense at all. And I'm not saying here that this will all be bad. I think it sounds terrible personally, but I'm not going to state that as fact. It's just my opinion so far. And I do need to try it all out. Maybe it will play okay. And some people do like the sound of this and will enjoy it. But it's a small percentage right now, and that's where a lot of the issues lie. The vast majority of the player base has become used to how this game plays after a year of release. To now have it all switched up, good or bad, of course is going to upset them, especially coming at a time when more people were actually willing to support BF5 with the Pacific update and a few other good things being put in place. The game actually is getting to a state where it feels pretty good, and then we get these announcements. So regardless of how exactly this ends up feeling, it's easy for me to say that the vast majority of the existing Battlefield 5 community don't want this. This happened before, remember? Early in Battlefield 5's life cycle, DICE wanted to increase the time to kill, and they ended up having to reverse it because it got such a fiercely adverse reaction from the community. This isn't what it wants on the whole, in terms of majority rule, and it's pretty crazy to think about considering the time to kill in BF1 was actually reduced in order to improve the game and please the player base. Then when they tried to do the opposite in BF5, the player base said no, and yet now they try to do it again, and not just to increase the bullets to kill by 1 such as last time, but this time by multiple bullets. I see the general community and content creators alike now scrabbling around for answers as to why, looking at the provider communication and stating that it simply doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense, honestly, at least not entirely. The claims that it's to improve weapon usage variety, to balance out MMGs, to improve range play and all those kinds of things. Some creators are defending this decision based on these things, but they're honestly all side issues that are a happy coincidence for DICE, or things that they're entirely just using for corporate speak in order to sell you the changes. I'm not saying they've got evil intentions, but I'm just being realistic. This is how business works sometimes. There are two main reasons why this is happening, even though the current player base doesn't want it, from what I've been told by my source, and via making deductions based upon what I've witnessed over the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm near certain you won't be hearing this anywhere else right now. DICE want to make this game a less punishing experience for newer/less able players. This was something that was alluded to actually back when they tried to change the TTK before. They don't want players to die a lot very quickly when they first play the game and stop playing or refund their purchase. And doesn't lowering recoil also sound very new player friendly? Much like how Call of Duty Modern Warfare has implemented so-called safe spaces into their game to protect, as many put it, noobs. Or as I like to put it, new players or less able players. Battlefield 5 is doing their own version of that, just in a different way. That's part of why there's so much confusion. Because while everyone sits there and says that nobody asked for this, well, it's because it isn't for you. It isn't for the existing players. It's for new players and, for example, a target to pick back up sales at Christmas. This isn't speculation on my part. It's information I've received and have then compared with logical outcomes and outlooks, plus prior evidence from earlier attempts made. I know this isn't what many of you want to hear, but it's why the reasons DICE are giving don't make sense. And of course I may be vilified for this. DICE will, and absolutely should if they've got any sense, claim this isn't true. And I've put myself in a somewhat unenviable spot by doing this, but I'm always honest and provide the information I have, so I'm doing that. And that's reason number 1 for these utterly confusing planned time to kill changes. Reason number 2 is that DICE have wanted to have this in place for a long time. Longer than you likely even imagine. This is not a change as a response to current feedback and data, aside from players quitting due to dying too fast, of course. I cannot be specific here as much as I want to be, because I have to be ethical in terms of considering my source. But what I can say is that it's been relayed to me that this is a direction that DICE have been moving towards, and if you look carefully, you can clearly see evidence of this. Initially, I'm trusting other people here as I didn't play BF3 or 4, but I'm told Battlefield 4 had a slower TTK than BF3. BF1 has a slower times kill than BF4, at least initially, and with BF5 we've seen this progression abruptly accelerate. The second closed alpha experimented with slower TTK, and the update I've already spoken about from 2018 experimented with even slower times to kill, before they had to do away with it all when the community had just had enough. I'm not blaming all of the developers here. In fact, from what I hear, there are some fantastic devs working at DICE. Some of them very frustrated actually, and there's a reason why so many keep leaving. No, issues like this are directives from senior people generally, directives from management, and this is where a lot of the problems lie. I'm desperately trying to work out how to word all of this, but some of the management at DICE is apparently muddled, talent limiting, and problematic. And I know, as much as some of them won't say it, there are some devs out there that would wholeheartedly agree with this. Absolutely the ones that have already left the company, I imagine, or some of them at least. And this insistence on a slower times kill is due to it being part of an overall desired vision, despite it not lining up with what most BF players want. It's a core example of the problems I'm talking about. Those two reasons are why it didn't make sense way back the first time they tried this, when DICE was saying that they were changing the time to kill in order to combat the time to death issues, which were caused by netcode issues, by the way. I said this at the time, as did others. Well, now we know why. It wasn't for that provided reason, just as this time it likely isn't for these provided reasons, or at least not purely because of them. It's to push through a change that they've wanted for a very long time, or at least some people there have wanted, and in order to grab more casual players for higher sales, whilst risking the continued play of the current player base. Perhaps maybe just later on to reverse it again and get players back on side, who knows at this point. And whether you believe me or not, take a second to sit there and think, does this actually sound unlikely, or exactly what this company would do from a business perspective? Everything I've said. I know my answer to that, and I think many of you probably have the same one. As an extra point, does it seem logical that they do the work to rebalance the entire game for an existing player base that hasn't asked for it, when we know that they've been hard pushed already to do the amount of work they've needed in order to try to get this game back on track? In fact, is any company going to put in that much work without the player base asking for it, unless it's for different reasons? And no, it's not about differentiating weapons for future gun releases and such like. I've seen that idea put forwards. No, this is such an over-the-top plan for that outcome and doesn't line up with the information I provided for you today, especially in the face of the TTK being lowered at every turn when it comes to community feedback. I made a poll on Twitter. Now, it didn't get as many votes as normal this time, and these things can be echo chambers to a certain extent, but it's somewhat telling, at least to some extent, that 72% of votes are for things to stay as they are now, with just 11% saying they like the sound of these changes, and the rest voting for not being bothered either way. Danny on PC ran a poll that got a fair few more votes, and that sees around 75% of people say they're happy with the current time to kill, without him mentioning any proposed changes in his question. The mass feedback I can find on YouTube, Twitter, forums, Reddit is that these changes aren't wanted. So again, let me ask you, do you really think that all of this work is for you, the current players? Do you really think it's for effects that you're going to benefit from? I would personally find it hard to believe so if I were at your end of the discussion. Now, I've seen some people say, why is X person letting this happen? Well, X person probably has no say in it, and I've been informed that multiple devs have essentially been told that they don't know what's best for the game and to do as instructed, and also that there's an amount of people working on this game that don't play it particularly, and in fact don't really play FPS games. Take that with a pinch of salt if you like. I'm just saying what I've been told. It's why you get a lot of, oh no, I can't say that bit, sorry, actually, but it's why some things in the game are as they are, and that's vague, but there's a point there. If you don't trust this, then feel free to Google some of the work reviews from staff who have left DICE. I'm not going to say that they're for sure correct, or that they aren't the result of of staff being fired or people who were just unhappy anyway and left, but their stories sure do line up with what I've heard and what I've conveyed to you here today. There's a common thread involved. Now for the actual changes themselves, whether they feel decent overall or not, there's not much escaping that bolt actions, whether they be sniper rifles or bolt action carbines, are going to be ungodly good probably. In fact, in terms of stats, snipers will go from trash tier to god tier in terms of optimal performance, especially on console, where the requirement to hit headshots with thumbsticks is just kind of insane really compared to with the time to kill of other weapons. Now you could see this as a balancing factor, and that's viable, but it seems like we're going to swing all the way the other way, which again isn't necessarily good balance. And I'm struggling with the notion of all these changes being brought in on both PC and console, which are very different, and being well balanced. But that's speculation, so I won't go into it too much today. But take the jungle carbine for example, on another note, 2 shots to kill out to 70 meters or so, right? Keep that in mind considering the bullet to kill values I listed earlier for other weapons. And imagine someone like Stode now. That's going to be an absolute bloodbath with his sniper rifle shot. Or think of an unaltered Boys AT rifle now with changes in place for most other guns. That one makes me shudder. Anti-material rifles could replace MMGs as the prone playstyle weapon of choice. Now I know this video won't go over well with everyone, and if for some reason you now want to hate me, then hate me, that's up to you. But I did what I felt was the right thing to do, and I'd do it again. Consider what would be the easier path for me as a content creator, the path that has seemingly more benefits, and yet I continue to release videos such as this when called for. At some point I hope it's realised that I do this for the community, not purely for viewership. Steering clear of such things would likely be better for me in terms of gaining affiliation and such like, and we know the perks of that. I really hope that starts to be recognised that I do this for you, for the people that play the game. And with that covered, I do want to talk about other parts of the announcement, of which a lot looks very positive, at least from my perspective. Not everyone will like them of course, because you can never please everybody, but there's lots of good stuff in there. But considering how long this video already is, the average attention span of people, and how stretched out my footage probably is by now, let's rapid fire this out, okay? So player acquisition icons are being added, essentially an effort to try to get rid of the near constant blending in of players on some maps, even when they're right near you. So now enemies will get an icon over their head if you aim directly at them within 15 meters, and as you move closer, it will eventually show you what class they are. Plus, enemies will have the icon over them if they're within your field of view and within 5 meters and not obscured by something. And that's really close, 5 meters. It's only for the individual who sees the enemy, and this doesn't work outside of 15 meters overall, or what is basically pretty close range. I really like the sound of this personally. It still allows people to try to use the environment to their advantage, but not to the extent that it's near impossible to find them. A great move by DICE, I feel. Next, community games or private servers are confirmed to come within the 5.2 update, and the fact they're talking about this again now, and I believe are having a stream reveal at some point very soon, means it must be getting very close, so good stuff there. They also currently intend to deliver the new Wake Island map as part of the 5.2 update and then release it a few weeks later. So although that's a little vague, at least it's something else to look forward to. The Fliegerfaust is being altered. It will have a reduction to detonation radius where dealing full damage, so you'll need to be more precise with your shot, but it's also having its range increased. Moving on, they're adding in that you will be notified now when you're spotted, so if a flare goes up over you and you're spotted by it for example, you will now know about it rather than just unwittingly walking into enemy fire. The new lunge mine is now delayed until after 5.2. I know we get frustrated with so many delays, but I think we'd all prefer to have these things in place and working later on than added in and causing issues due to being broken. There are also some changes to damage dealt to vehicles. Some sound good and some sound bad, but although I could try to explain it, as I'm not a vehicle user, there simply isn't that much point. So I'll link to Azora Productions video about them in the description. He's a good guy, a friend of the channel, and has some great content, so be sure to check out that video if you want to know more. And there are a few other bits and pieces, but essentially that's my roundup. No summary needed, I feel, after all that. Now you make up your own mind about it all and let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate you leaving a like, subscribe and turn on notifications to catch my future content, and feel free to follow my stream and join my Discord server in the description and my pinned comment. Here's the Board of Awesome for the epic people who support the channel on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes. I love them all deeply and of course often. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with that all said, I am GetGoodGuy and I will see you next time. Laters. As for existing players, I'm sure some will agree with me and some will disagree. Many preferred the premium model though from Battlefield 1 for example, in terms of the content, the quality of it and the regularity of it. But the live service is still going, it does still add things and is there along with all those maps and weapons.